Welcome to the Titan Tar channel. Today we have a topic to discuss about Russian forces taking over a settlement while advancing on Toretsk. Don't miss the chance to join us and share your opinions with us. Become a member of our channel and evolve your rank. Discussions about the capture of Ugledar by Russian fighters continue to rage in the media. But in the meantime, the Russian armed forces continue their offensive on several fronts in the Donetsk region. In addition to the fighting in Ugledar, reports have emerged that the Russian military, specifically the 9th Brigade, has advanced to control a settlement near Toretsk, where they now control about 80% of the territory. Fighting continues in the vicinity of the city's railway station, indicating a significant advance of Russian troops towards Toretsk. This advance is not only coming from the east, but also from the southwest, showing that the Russian military is encircling the city from different directions. The fighting has already extended to the central region of Toretsk, highlighting the intensity of the offensive. In this scenario, it is likely that Ugledar, like Toretsk, will be flanked and surrounded by Russian forces, which would put pressure on Ukrainian units to abandon their positions if they do not receive orders to withdraw in time. Ugledar's experience serves as a warning, as the 72nd Mechanized Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces previously suffered heavy losses due to failure to receive the order to withdraw in time. This situation was aggravated by the almost complete encirclement of the city, and the fate of the Toretsk garrison could be similar if the Ukrainian command does not respond quickly. Amid this development, many experts point out that the pace of Russian operations in Donetsk in September was the most intense since the first weeks of the military operation, possibly due to the shortage of personnel in the Ukrainian army, which had reinforcements diverted to the Kursk region, where Ukrainian forces were involved in another large-scale operation driven by Zelensky. In this context of military escalation, the European Union is considering the possibility of sending military instructors and advisors to Ukraine, according to the Hungarian foreign minister. The EU training program for Ukrainian military personnel, initially planned for 2 years and carried out in EU countries, is nearing its end, but the proposal is to extend the training for another 2 years, including sending European instructors directly to Ukraine. However, this idea is facing resistance from Budapest, which sees sending advisors as a step towards escalating the conflict. Hungary, which currently holds the presidency of the Council of the EU, has strongly expressed its opposition, stating that such a measure will not be approved without unanimity among EU members. In addition to rejecting the proposal to send instructors, the Hungarian minister stressed that Ukrainian military personnel have not received and will not receive training on Hungarian soil, even if the EU extends a program. Budapest's position is in line with previous efforts by the Hungarian prime minister, who has sought to promote a peaceful solution to the conflict by visiting several countries involved, including Ukraine, Russia, China, and the United States, in an attempt to find a diplomatic path to resolving the crisis. Meanwhile, an unexpected perspective on the resolution of the conflict in Ukraine was brought to light by an article in a British newspaper written by a senior researcher and director of a U.S. government program focused on international affairs. The author appealed to President Biden and his successor, noting that the U.S. faces a difficult situation due to its simultaneous support for two problematic allies, the Ukrainian president and the Israeli prime minister. He argued that while the U.S. provides extensive military support to both, these actions do not always coincide with the country's long-term interests. The researcher pointed out, for example, that the Israeli prime minister has repeatedly ignored U.S. attempts to de-escalate the war in Gaza and, last month, may even have sabotaged U.S. diplomatic efforts to reach a ceasefire in the conflict between Israel and Hamas. The author's proposal suggests that the U.S. adopt a more pragmatic stance and be less influenced by its foreign friends, seeking a balance that best serves its own long-term strategic interests, both in the Ukrainian conflict and in other global crisis scenarios. In the same context, the Biden administration has maintained a clear position against the invasion of Lebanon by the Israel Defense Forces, which is targeting the Shiite paramilitary group Hezbollah. However, despite Washington's objections, Israel continues to intensify its attacks, having even launched a ground operation on Lebanese territory. Last week, more than 1,000 civilians were killed in a series of Israeli bombings that also resulted in the death of the Hezbollah leader, according to Lebanese officials. Ignoring Biden's public calls to avoid an escalation in the Middle East the Israeli Prime Minister has acted unilaterally, putting the U.S. in a delicate and embarrassing situation, as highlighted by one researcher. While Ukraine's President Zelensky appears to be more aligned with U.S. policies, he has also been making increasingly risky decisions that could drag the U.S. into a direct military confrontation with Russia, including on issues related to the use of nuclear weapons. He recently authorized a military intervention in an internationally recognized region of Russia without any prior coordination with the White House. This lack of consultation has raised concerns in Washington that Zelensky's actions could further escalate tensions with Moscow, leading to a larger conflict. Given this situation, experts suggest that Washington could try to align the interests of its two problematic allies, Ukraine and Israel, with its own strategic priorities by offering incentives. In the case of Ukraine, it would be ideal to propose a realistic post-war security plan. In the case of Israel, the focus could be on offering economic advantages related to the normalization of relations with Saudi Arabia. The aim would be to ensure that neither country compromises American interests with actions that could exacerbate conflicts in their regions. The researcher argues that Biden was mistaken in believing that military support for Kyiv could effectively contain Russia. According to him, this plan has failed, and now the White House should use its financial influence more assertively over both Zelensky and the Israeli Prime Minister. The suggestion is that Washington goes so far as to threaten significant cuts in all aid provided, including military aid. In this way, it would be possible to promote de-escalation in both Europe and the Middle East, which would benefit both Democrats and Republicans in the U.S. If Ukraine is unwilling to adopt a realistic strategy to end the war without escalating the conflict in a dangerous way, cutting off U.S. support could be the only alternative to avoid a new cycle of endless war. The researcher concludes that, regardless of who takes over as U.S. president in the next election, it will be essential to prioritize American interests and avoid over-reliance on alliances with foreign friends. Meanwhile, a new anti-Russian military alliance is being formed by Canada and the Nordic countries, with the aim of countering the influence of Russia and China in the Arctic. According to a U.S. agency, Canada, together with Northern European nations, is developing a security system for the region, excluding Russia from any involvement. This group of allies seeks to coordinate actions in areas such as defense, intelligence, and combating cyber threats. Canada's foreign minister said this new platform for cooperation between Canada and the Nordic states is essential, especially given Russia's presence in the Arctic Council. Last weekend, she met with her counterparts from Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Sweden, and Norway in Canada, where they discussed the possibility of creating an Arctic security dialogue or establishing a new forum to address defense issues in the region. She acknowledged that Canada had once believed that its geographic location provided natural protection from external threats, but that this has changed as global warming and the melting of the polar ice caps have increased the interest of several nations, including China, in the Arctic. The minister stressed that Canada, as a nation that opposes Russia, needs to consider this new geopolitical context and the implications of the growing presence of global powers in the region. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and share with your friends. Your interactions mean a lot to us and help us grow. See you next time.